Hello everybody and welcome to Little in Life. My name is Jonathan, and as most of you know, I'm a caregiver for my wife Lynn, who has an anoxic brain injury. Today we're going to do something fun, something very different than I usually do anyways. I've done something similar to this once. I am converting vintage slides and digitizing them, scanning them and digitizing them, so I can archive them. And the device I use will also scan negatives as well. And I want to show you how it works, and then I'm going to share some of these vintage photos with you. They're pretty cool and it's going to be fun. So let's get going. My name is Jonathan, and I'm a caregiver for my wife Lynn, who has a permanent brain injury. Things are a bit different now, but we're doing the best that we can. Join us as we experience the Lynn life. Well, I got a big job ahead of me, and I got several of these albums that are filled with vintage slides from my family, and many of them are from the 50s, about when my parents were first married. And my father liked to take pictures. He was a pretty avid photographer, and he liked to create slides, and I got several of these albums, and I wanted to convert them just like I've done in the past when I converted old video over. I want to archive them. I feel that it's very important to be able to do that, and once you get that in a digital file, you can share it with others, and you can label them, and you can organize them, and that's what I want to do. This is going to take me a very long time to do all of them, but I've started kind of picking out a few that I thought were interesting, and I want to show you guys how it's done and what I'm using to do it, because maybe it's something you want to do, and I hope it's something you want to do. I encourage it. It's very important to save old images. You don't want those to get lost. And it's very easy if something happened to one of these albums, it'd be gone forever. There's no other copy. So, but by archiving them, they're here, and I'll share it with Justin, my son Justin. I can share it with my sisters, and we all have it. There's multiple copies now, and it's much easier to view, and you can print them. You can send them out and have them printed as well. So it's a very good thing to do. Now what I'm using, the device I'm using, is from Kodak. It's the Kodak Scanza digital film scanner. That's what I'm using, and it looks like this. Not too complicated. It's got several different adapters depending on the size of film or negatives or slides or whatever you have. This is the one I was using, and it opens up. I'm going to show you the whole process, how to do it. It opens up, you put your slide in, close it up, and you can slide it in there. It's got a screen on it. You can do some adjusting to the image, and then you just press the button and it saves on an SD card that you put in the back. And then you can just put the SD card in the computer and label it, save it in other folders, create folders for it, and it works great. So this is how it works. Alright, so I've picked my slide, and I'm going to put it in the slide holder like this, okay, and then I hit this is capture, Very simple. And I'm going to slide it in, and voila, you got an image. Now that image can be adjusted. So if I want to see if I can do this right. There's my brightness. I want to reduce the brightness a little bit. Bring it down. Okay, that's better. And I'm all set. And say I want to take that image. I just hit this capture button here. Boom, saving. And that's it. And I'll show some of these images to you a little bit later, but this is a picture of me and one of my friends in 1968 on Long Island, and we're under a sprinkler. I can't remember that sprinkler. So the thing is with slides is it's very difficult to see them until you put them in something and you project them, or you see them a little bit larger. So it's tough to tell what you have. But so it's always kind of an adventure as you go along. So this is neat. Then the other important thing to do is once you have the slide is to make a little notification and put John Sprinkler 1968. That was July. Because you're going to need that later when you archive it on your computer. So it's important to make a little notification when the slide is out, because every slide has a little indication there. It says July 1968 right on it. Some of our slides, my father has actually written on their explanation of who it is and when it is, but this one doesn't. But it does say July 68, so I know that. Another thing to do, and I didn't mention this, is before putting in your slide, take a microfiber cloth and kind of just gently wipe it down a little bit. Gets any dust off, and that's important. And I'm going to do another one here, and this one kind of goes along with the one I just did. This is also July 68, taken at the same day, same time. Now adjust your slide a little bit so that's nice and centered. And we're going to slip that in and see what we got. It's a little bit bright, but you can see there's a picture of me and my friend. That's actually John O'Shea. I know who that is. And his older brother, John, was a year or so younger than me, but his brother was my best friend, Jim. And let's see if we get this. And we're going to adjust brightness. And let's see if I can get it a little bit better. Getting too bright. I guess about as good as I'm going to get. And saving. Looks like I'm missing a tooth there. Let's do another one. We got one here. It's actually marked Bethpage 1968. It's also done in July. Now the slide will say July. That's when it was processed. It doesn't necessarily mean that's when it was shot. I have a feeling that this is an Easter picture. So might have been developed in July, but it definitely was in 1968. And this one is going to be an interesting one. Yep. That is myself and my two younger sisters in front of our house on Long Island, Bethpage. And for some of these that I might want to keep, I'm going to make this copy right now. There it is, that's been saved. And for some of these, if I wanted to print them, I might bring them into Photoshop. And Sisters, 1968. I'm gonna say that's Easter, and that's why we were dressed that way. Now I'm going to show you how I archive all these pictures I've just digitized, and I obviously bring the disc into the computer. I have all my little descriptions of every slide. They're in order that I actually recorded them. Then I have a folder, it's called Old Slides, and I put all the years down. So, and then inside those years, I would actually put a description. I actually put the slides, and I put a little description of what is on the slide, because that's what I wrote down here. So the very first one I have here is John and Tommy R. It's Tommy Regan, 1963. Let's just double check. Yep, that's it. So I'm going, and that is 1963, so that's here. So I'm going to drag that over there, and then I'm going to relabel it, and John and Tommy are 63, and there you go. So then that one's done, and then I'd go to the next one, just double check what it is. It says John in the Sand, 1963, so I know that's correct. So here we go, and I'll relabel that as well. Oops, didn't mean to bring that up. Yeah, John and Sand, 63. Boom. So it's a process. It takes a little while, and then I'll make a little mark which ones I've done. I'll check it off. Okay, did that. And the next one is John and the Sprinkler, and then etc. all the way down. And it takes a while. It's a process to go through all these albums with all these slides. It'll take months for me to properly archive them. But then the nice thing about it is once they are, then I can share them with everybody. I can put them on multiple hard drives. I'll give a set to Justin. I'll give a set to my sisters. And so that everybody has them and they're archived forever and people can enjoy them. You can also send them out to be printed. Should I, the ones that I want to print, I might bring into Photoshop to adjust colors and contrast and things like that a little bit to improve them. But I'll do that, and I'm definitely going to have several of these printed so that I can frame them. So I encourage everybody to do this. And now for the fun part, I'm going to go through and show you some of the slides that I've already converted and talk to you about them a little bit. I think you might be interested. Now for the fun part, let's take a look at some of these old pictures that I've already digitized. And I've put them in folders by the year. So I have one big folder that says Old Slides, and then within that I have all the years of that the slides were taken. And the first one I have so far is 1954, And I got one here, it says Dad and Fifi. And Fifi was my parents' first car after they were married, and it was a probably a 1954 Renault, and it was red, looked kind of like a Volkswagen. And they like to name their cars, so that one was named Fifi. A couple others from 1954. Let's see here. My grandmother. This is my father's mother. And I called her Nana. And she died when I was very young. I do remember her. And then there's my grandfather. It was Nana's husband, my father's father. And that's my mother there as well. And my grandfather was a jack of all trades throughout his whole life. He did a little bit of everything. He owned a feed store. He had a trucking company, and then later in life he had a painting company. Well, it says painting and decorating, and this was his vehicle, and it was an old hearse. It was a Hudson, an old Hudson, and I think my father lettered it for him. And so that's it's pretty cool, especially the phone number on there. It's pretty neat. And here's another one from 1954. This is my mother in their apartment, their first apartment, before they bought, our first house. And it's Christmas time. And look at the old TV. It's so cool. My mother always loved to decorate for Christmas, and she kind of went crazy. And that's such a cool picture. I have no idea what she's looking at. Something with that bow on it. I don't know, some sort of a stand. I don't know what that is, but love the picture. Moving up one year to 1955 now. This is all before I was born. We got a picture here of my grandfather again. And he's with my cousin Jim, who I just spoke to the other day. I wish I had done this before he called me, and I could have talked to him about this. So this is 1955, and he's wearing a coonskin cap, like practically every boy in 1955 had a Davy Crockett coonskin cap, and he's wearing that, and I think he has a I forget what you call it, that jacket there with the fringe or whatever. I think I had one of them too. It might have been that one, actually. That might have been a hand-me-down. And there's my grandfather. And as I mentioned, my grandfather was a jack of all trades. As you can see in this image, he's packing. He's got a little pistol stuck in his belt, and he's got a badge. He also worked as a deputy sheriff, as a side hustle. Also in 1955, my parents got yet another car, and it was a Nash Metropolitan. And this is it. They always had very cool cars, and they liked to name them. So this one was named Lilibet, and I had forgotten that until I saw Mom with Lilibet and on the slide. And after I digitize the slide, I see the Metropolitan. I go, oh yeah, I remember them talking about the Metropolitan named Lilibet. So there it is. They always had cool cars, but they got even cooler. Here's my mom in their 1956 Austin Healey. The first Austin Healey, and it was really cool. And here's a picture of my dad in the car, and a picture of the two of them in that car. Very, very cool. This started their sports car years. In 1961, I was born, and I ruined their sports car years. But they had a pretty good bunch of years with their sports cars. They actually joined a the Long Island Sports Car Club. There were members there for quite a while. I have some other mementos around from that era. And here's a picture. This is in Lime Rock, I believe. And they used to do a lot of amateur sports car racing, rally racing, Jim Connor type races. And they used to go to a lot of sports car racing. So this is an image. There are a lot of these in my slides, and I haven't converted all of them yet, but this is one of them. Moving ahead, 1959 now. This is an image, I guess it's called the Bella Vista Inn, one of the places. They must have had, I don't know if this is where their sports car club met, I'm not sure. But this was definitely part of their sports car club. There's several sports cars there, and that blue Austin Healey in the middle, that's my parents. They got another one, and this one was a little bigger. This one had a 6-cylinder in it, and it was blue. It was a beautiful car. And that's a picture. That's my mother sitting in there with the hat. She's talking to somebody else. And that's cool. But the coolest thing about this car, this is the car they had when I was born. That's how I came home from the hospital. I came from a hospital on my mother's lap in that car. Can't do that today. But they did back in '61. But this image was from 1959. Later in 1959, February to be exact, this picture was taken. It's during the winter. The car is pretty dirty. I can see that. And that's my mother taking something out of the trunk. They got the I think they called that a bonnet, if I remember correctly. But the cover, the convertible top is on. I think they called that a bonnet. And so she's getting something out of the trunk, but that's what she had. This is 1959, 2 years from the time I was born. We're going to move ahead quite a bit here to 1963, summer of '63. So now I'm around. My parents moved from Queens. They moved to the suburbs. They moved to Bethpage, New York, out on Long Island, because they're starting a family. My parents were married for almost about 7 years before they had me, and I'm the oldest. So they had a good time. And actually, ironically, Lynn and I were married for about 6 years before we had Justin. So maybe it's a tradition. But here I am. I'm the one in the box. 2 years old. That guy with in the red sweater, his name is Jimmy Hilker. He's a little older than me. Him and another guy next door, Tommy Regan. They were kind of like big brothers to me. I looked up to both of them very much, and used to try to pal around with them. And but this is, I think this was like a birthday party or something, maybe for me. Here I am again in 1963, all duded up. I don't know where I was going or what I was doing. Maybe it was Easter. I think it said July, but that doesn't mean that the picture was taken in July. It might have been processed in July. But I got a little bow tie, some little black patent leather shoes, and I'm on our driveway, and I'm looking marvelous. Here's another picture taken the same day, and I don't remember if this is Tommy or Jimmy, but you could see I was looking up to him right then. I thought the older boys were cool. Moving ahead, 1968. Picture of me and one of my friends. This is John O'Shea. He was like maybe a year younger than me. His older brother was my age. His name was Jim, and Jim was my best friend. Jim's now a priest. And this is us under a sprinkler in our backyard in Bethpage, New York, on Long Island, where I lived until I was almost 10. I think we moved in March, I turned 10 in May. So, yeah, I still have some very fond memories of living in Long Island. Also in 1968, I believe this is Easter. I'm like positive this is Easter. This is myself and my two sisters, Sue and Jen, out in front of our house in Bethpage. And we're dressed to the nines. Another fond memory I have when I was a kid living on Long Island is that my aunt and uncle lived just a little ways away. They lived in Massapequa Park. And we used to go over and visit them a lot, especially during the summer, because my uncle had an in-ground swimming pool. And there weren't a lot of in-ground swimming pools that were privately owned at that time, at least not on our block or any of the other ones I've seen. There weren't too many of them. There were a lot of above-ground pools. But he had an in-ground pool, and we used to go over all the time to swim. And this is my Uncle Steve skimming whatever out of his in-ground pool. And then this is an image of myself and my two sisters along the edge of the pool. Moving ahead, 1970. Here's an image of me and my pumpkin. There was a competition at my school, and I don't know what grade was I in? Was I third grade then? 1970, I think third grade maybe. And my dad, being an artist, was very helpful in creating interesting things. I had an advantage, and he helped me make, well, he did most of the work, let's face it. It's a Keystone Cop, very cool. I was very proud of it, as you can see, and I don't remember if I won anything or not, but I remember that the eyeballs were gumballs. I remember that distinctly. Also, the same year, probably the same day, is a picture of myself and my sister Sue. And that's at our back door. I remember going in that door, went to the right, was our laundry room, and to the left there was the downstairs bathroom. And I remember it distinctly. To the right, there's a gate there that goes out. Our back yard had that white picket fence that went all the way around it. So bringing back a lot of memories. And once I see it, I didn't remember having a hose there, but it makes sense. I can't remember it now. But it's really cool. It brings back all these memories when you get to see these old pictures that you haven't seen in so long. In 1971, we moved from Long Island, and we moved upstate to a very rural area. We moved to Delaware County, outside Delhi. And it was a total departure from what I was used to. I had been used to suburbia. My dad had worked right in Manhattan in New York City, and I used to go to New York City often. And living in the suburbs, there was a lot there for me. From there, I went into the country, where there was, and I liked it. I liked the country. There was woods. I could go hiking. I could do all kinds of interesting things. This is a picture of me up on the mountain behind my parents' new house, and I remembered this picture being used possibly for one of my dad's paintings. So that orange cap was actually a baseball cap from when I played Little League on Long Island. So I'm wearing that. So it was right after we moved. And I remember him using it for a photo. At least I thought I did. So I asked my one sister, Sister Jennifer, and she said, oh, yeah. I think I have one of his studies. My dad used to paint, before he painted a large painting, he would paint a smaller one. And he called it his study. And he would kind of work out the whole painting on that. And I asked her about it. She says, I think we may have one. And I asked her if she would go look for it, and she did. And here it is. She sent me an image. And there's a basic picture, or a painting, small painting. This is only very small. Using this as a reference. Now, I had mentioned my dad was an artist. He worked as a commercial artist. And in fact, when we moved from Long Island, he ended up working for the State University. But he still did paintings, sort of as a side hustle. He used to sell paintings and go to art shows. He really enjoyed it. So this is a picture of him at one of his art shows. Now, if I'm going to show my dad, I got to show my mother as well, though she wouldn't have liked that. She's looking down at me right now going, don't you dare show that picture of me. This is my mother. I believe we were in Cape Cod. We went on vacation one year and we were in Cape Cod. So here's my mother on the beach. Here's my mother again with my two sisters. My sister Sue, my sister Jen, and I believe they're eating blackberries. And when I sent some of these images to my sisters, and when I sent it to Jennifer, she sent me back a picture of that mug that Sue was holding. And she said she's still drinking coffee out of it. That's awesome. In 1975, I believe the church we went to, a Presbyterian church, was having their 100th anniversary, or some sort of anniversary. And so I think it was 100th. It would make sense. So if it was 1975, 100 years before, that would have been 1875. And they had a function at the church where people would dress up in vintage clothing. So here's an image of my father wearing a vintage suit, and my sister Sue wearing a dress that my mother sewed for her. It's not actually vintage, but looks vintage. And I know she was proud of that because she was really into Little House on the Prairie. So these have been cool. And there are a lot more I've converted, but I can't show them all to you. But I'm just going through some of the coolest ones. And actually, I have one more I'm going to show you. And it's not a slide that my father took. It's one that I took. It's 1982. And it's of me and some of my buddies from college. We were on our way to spring break in Daytona Beach. And here it is. Can you guess which one is me? I'm that guy with the sunglasses way to the right with the 82 on. That's me. Can you believe it? Some of these pictures are shocking. So now you've seen me when I was just 2 years old. You've seen me when I was in college, and of course you know what I look like now. So, you know, time marches on. So, that's going to about do it. I highly recommend that if you've got slides kicking around, if you've got photographs, you know, scan them. If you get one of these devices and you have the negatives, you can scan those the same way. It has a menu. It comes up and you tell it what you want to do. So if you're scanning negatives, it'll create positives out of them. And I highly suggest you get on it and start doing that. It's very satisfying once you do, and you'll be happy you did it. So if you have any questions about any of this stuff, by all means leave me a question in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer it. And we'll see you next time on the Lynn Line.